And Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom.
It's your brothers of Great Millstone, Charlotte, with another Sunday sit down for the spirit and power of How about Shemi Shai. First and foremost, we want to start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Recha, HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Hey, so as you can see, man, by the title, let the vision power your decision, and just going into, applying, what we're learning, man, right? Applying the understanding of the will of the Lord into your day to day, as we walk through, these snares and traps that are set before us, man, right? So all the things that we see, all the things that, we encounter, right, should all be filtered through the Spirit, right? And it's filtered through the will of Yahweh Shemi Yahweh Shai, right? So we could start with that in Proverbs 29.
This is Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 16 or 18, and it says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he."
Right. So where there is no vision, the people perish, man. Right. Your life and death, right, is connected to what you see or what you've been allowed to see ultimately, right? Because the Lord is allowing some to see and allowing some to remain in darkness, So now what we're seeing is we're seeing the kingdom, right? We're seeing salvation. But we're also seeing, prophecy, come down the pipe, man, right? So we're doing what? Preparing ourselves in the spirit. These people can't see it, right? The Lord hasn't opened their eyes to see it, their ears to hear, right? That's why it says that in Matthew, that's a blessing, man, right? Because now you can get yourself ready, right, to be on the right side of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, right? You can make decisions accordingly, right? Even in your regular life, right? You're not gonna be, hasty to make moves. So you're not gonna make rash decisions because you're gonna think, how the Lord would anticipate or would, what's the word? How the Lord ultimately would want you to move in these certain situations, man. Right? Whether He wants you to be patient, whether He wants you to exercise, right, some other spiritual, wisdom, understanding, in whatever we're going through, If you have anything, you can add.
God. I got Proverbs 22 and verse 3, and it says, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." All right, in which it says a prudent man, a prudent man goes into a man of wisdom, a man of the scriptures. It says foreseeth the evil, because the Lord ultimately has blessed us with the eyesight, with the vision, so, and going into the title, it says let the vision power your decision, because as we enter into these perilous times, ultimately those with the vision is ultimately going to be in the spirit of hiding ourselves in this truth. That's where we find aid and succor. It says, but the simple pass on and are punished, so those that don't ultimately have the vision, they're going to be making those decisions based off of, they're going to be making those decisions based off of their flesh, how, the brother priest Armawan and myself, essentially going into the senses, wisdom ultimately increases and heightens in the senses. It enhances the awareness, so those that have the true vision, those that are ultimately using the vision, which is going into prophecy, are going to hide themselves, while those that are ultimately abiding in that dull sense of senses from the carnality is going to be essentially destroyed.
That's right. Because you get Isaiah 60 and verse 2.
Is Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 2. And it says, "For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross," It says, "For behold, for behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee."
Right. So we're living in a world of gross darkness, right? What's in Job, if you want to get that, I can't remember where it's at, but it talks about, right, we're living in the land of darkness, man. Right? The people are dark. The ways of the world right now are dark, right? But Yahweh Shai, like it says, He's arising upon us, and that glory is shining through His men, man. Right? Starting with our apostles and elders on down, right? That glory of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai through this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is being shown, right? And it's being applied, you know? So now that light is allowing us to see and operate to the will of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, man. You know, how much more when that darkness continues to get to grow, right? Because we know it's going to grow thicker, so to speak.
Do you want that precept?
For sure.
God, this is Job 10 and verse 21, and it says, "Before I go whence, I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and of the shadow of death, a land of darkness, as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death, without any order, and where the light is as darkness."
Right. So we're living in the land of darkness now, man, and we need that light being Yahweh Shai to see. You know, we need that in order to be able to move correctly, because you can move around in the dark, but what's going to happen, man? You're going to be bumping into things, right? You're going to be falling in the pits, right? You don't know what's out there, right? You're going to be getting taken advantage of, right? But when that light, is given to us, you can carry yourself in the proper way, man, right? When you have the vision, the ability to see, right? You know what the Lord's will is, right? You know what directions you need to go. You know what steps you need to take, right? You know what, again, decisions that need to be made, right? Good or bad, according to this world, right? They're all good in the eyes of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, right? If you're moving according to His will, but you know what decisions need to be made in order to stay in accordance to the Lord, man. Baba Kushal, could you get Psalm 119 and 105?
I had a quick one if I can.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
It says Proverbs 4 and 18, and it says, "But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness, they know not at what they stumble." So those, we got Isaiah the 60th chapter in the second verse, ultimately going into those of this world, they're stumbling spiritually, all right, and they ultimately don't understand which way to take, because they're in that gross darkness, all right, which represents misery, ignorance, and the facets of this world. But going back to verse 18 in Proverbs 4, and it says, "But the path of the just is as the shining light." So ultimately, the elect ultimately have the light. It says the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. And that's because brothers are ultimately abiding, in the true sense of light, the true sense of direction. In which the Lord is ultimately growing the elect.
Exactly. Because you see the results of no direction, right, or wrong direction, right? We see it day in and day out with Jake out here in the world. You see it, right, with those who know that they're Israelites, man, right? The whole Hassad and Hakkad situation, the Al-Azhar situation, right? You see it with Nate up there in IUIC, right? All those people being led to the darkness, right? As scriptures say, if the blind be leaders of the blind, they shall all fall into the ditch, man, right? Because they don't have the vision, right, to make the correct decisions in these times, man. But could you get that Psalms? And I'm going to read this Proverbs in the NLT. Proverbs 29 and 18. It reads, "When people do not accept divine guidance, they will run wild. But whoever obeys the law is joyful," right? And this is divine guidance, having this light shined upon us, man, right? The light is presented to everybody, but as the scriptures say, the election have obtained it and the rest were blinded, man, right? That word obtain means to have a light shined upon you, right? So we're having that light given to us in order for us to be able to maneuver in the correct fashion, man, according to the will of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai.
It's Psalms 118 and verse 105, and it says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path."
Right, that's the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai being the word, right, as you read in the book of John, right? He's that lamp. He's that light, right? He's what's guiding us, right? He's that ultimate force that's nudging us in the correct paths and the correct directions, right, on our day to day, And when we enter into this hour of temptation, when we enter into Jacob's trouble, we're going to be guided by the Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, because we see the vision, we see the will of the Lord, right, for what it is, right? We've been allowed that access if you could get that, the no longer servants but friends.
Okay.
But we see the will of the Lord, right, taking place in the earth, man, right? And what our decisions are going to be according to, how He would make it, right? Like these Christians use the what would Jesus do, right? But we really think what would Yahweh do in a situation like this, man? What would our forefathers do in a situation like this? That's what these other camps and groups don't have, right? They don't have the ability to be able to decide, according to the will of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, according to prophecy, you know. Let priest stand. Show my Yahweh Shem Yahushua, but Shem Yahushua. But you can go ahead and grab that. That's
you want John or you?
Salah, yeah, get that, John, yeah, Salah.
Okay. John 15:15, verse 14, it says, "Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you."
Right, so we know what the will of Yahweh Shem Yahushua is, man. Right, we know what the will of the Heavenly Father is. Like the Scripture says, His good pleasure to give us the kingdom, man. Right, so everything that we see taking place is another step toward the kingdom, right? And we can see it right unfolding, right? We can see the kingdom. We can see right the rulerships, the crowns, the crowning ceremony, right? Receiving those palms, or will we be a part of that number? Right, we can see all these things. We can see right the earth being in its proper state. We can see the servants. We can see that having Esau and all these other heathen in subjection, man. Right, we can see all these things. So our steps that we're taking are in order to get to that point, man. That destination. The decisions that we make are to get to that destination, right? To receive salvation through Jacob's trouble, right? To go up in the chariots, to receive the new bodies, right? To have these spiritual powers, man, right? We can see all these things unfolding, right? But when you see these, now you know what needs to be done in order to get to that point, you know? That's why, again, not to harp on these other groups, but just speaking on the mark of the beast, right? If you can't see what the mark of the beast is, then your decision is going to be to take it, man, right? Because you don't know, right, that the Lord is setting that up as that ultimate snare, that ultimate trap, right? If you can't see that, that there are people out here that are out to get you, man, right? That you don't want everybody in your presence, right? As these other groups, allow anybody into their congregations, right? You're gonna make decisions that ultimately turn into pitfalls for you, man, right? Even going into your dealings with women, your dealings with people in the world, right? It's different decisions that you're making. If you're not making them in the eye or in a way that's appealing or appeasing to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, then you're gonna find yourself in a destitute state, man.
I got a quick precept. This is Matthew chapter 6 and verse 22. And it says, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." And it says, read again, it says, "The light of the body is the eye." It says, and what your eye ultimately is how one becomes illuminated. That's why the scriptures tell us to keep our eyes single. Because in keeping our eyes single, that means that we're focused. And then also going into word for single, it means healthy. So it says in the latter, Matthew 6 and 22, "If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." So being focused, we're going to be completely illuminated.
That's it. Could you get? We got that already. Get that Proverbs 3 and start at verse 5. We'll read 5 to 7.
Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5. "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths."
Right. Lean not into your own understanding. Lean not into your own vain opinions, your vain visions, right? Because everybody is looking forward to something, right? But the steps you're taking, the steps that the elect are going to be taking are toward the kingdom, right? The world are taking steps toward their own goals, their own what's the word? Show my mouth. Yeah, what's my shop like that? Can you hear us? I don't know. The priest might not be working. But you can run that back, Bob Kusha.
Okay. Proverbs 3. You want to go back to verse 5?
You can start. Yeah, start at 5.
Okay. Proverbs 3 and 5. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths."
Right, in all your ways, acknowledge Him. Right, acknowledge the will of the Lord's vision. Right, that He's been given to us. Right, that we've been blessed to receive. You know, acknowledge that in all your ways, and He will direct thy path. So He's going to point you in the right direction. Right, like the scriptures talk about. Scriptures tell you how a man's way is pretty much chosen by the Lord. Day by day, man. Right. But when you're acting in a way that's appeasing to Him, then He's going to point you in the way that to life, man. You know.
Verse 7. "Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil."
Mm-hmm. Right. So be not wise in thine own eyes, man. Right. Following your own belly. Right. What's the phrase? His eyes was too big for his stomach, or so to speak, man. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Jake is seeing things, right, that it's not prudent for you to obtain, man. Right. Because the Lord has us in a state of captivity. Right. Those things were ultimately set up as snares to destroy those who the Lord didn't want. Right. But in this time today that we're receiving, you know, that true food, that true nourishment, right? You can never receive enough of this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. Right. So your eye, again, going back to you, you brought out that your eye be single, man. Right. If your eyes focused on that, then you're gonna receive abundantly, man. You know. We can get let's see here.
Hey, Shalom, y'all, but Shema Shabbat, Shema Curtis, Brakatham.
Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shabbat Hashem, Chakras Barakatah.
Shalom, man. It's fucking Satan messing with my. You can't hear me?
You go ahead. I'm gonna go out and come back in.
You can hear me?
God.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, bro. It's, internet tripping. But yeah, you got it though, Slaki.
What precept did you want, Quanawaf?
Grab First Thessalonians, or actually no, grab Ephesians 5 and start with 15.
Okay. This is Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 15. And it says, "See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise." All right, which it says, "See then that ye walk circumspectly." When we go into this word for circumspect, I'm going to get it in the blue letter. And it says exactly, accurately, diligently. It says perfectly, in which circum means 360, so a circle all around. All right, spec means to look, so ultimately we have to, look in wisdom, be cognizant of the times that we in, and also, the environments and surroundings that we put ourselves into. But it says not as fools, but as wise, It says redeeming the time because the days are evil, in which, let me get this in the NLT. And it says, make the most of every opportunity in these evil days, so we should have the scriptures on our mind, not conducting ourselves in a worldly type of a manner. But it says, verse 17, "Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is." And it's the Lord's will to ultimately bring down America, Babylon the Great. So it wouldn't be expedient, to be in the fastest in the ways of captivity.
If I can add to that too, I got two quick ones. First, excuse me, just feeding off of what you just read. This is Colossians chapter 4 and verse 5. It says, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that they may know how ye ought to answer every man. And just going off of what your brothers is going into, all right, us having this wisdom should give you a clear picture of the situation that we're in. So knowing that we're at the end of this current age of Esau Edom's rulership, we have to utilize the scriptures, you know, in everything that we do, you know, whether we're out there in the highways or in our everyday, you know, living situations. You have to walk. You got to walk in wisdom, because the Lord made us a light, all right, in this world of darkness. So of course people are gonna naturally look at you different. But the point of the matter is that we have been given the true ways of life. So how we conduct ourselves is a representation of the heavens, of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. So this is why, you know, you were mentioning, you know, these different situations excuse me, that's being exposed through these different off camps, these different, you know, sellout Israelites. These niggas didn't have, you know, wisdom, ultimately because they never had the vision of what Yahweh Shai ultimately was letting us, you know, in on, as far as what it is our duty to be here on earth, because it goes beyond the law and the fringes and all that. This is pretty much us learning on how to govern the earth through wisdom. All right.
Right.
So like the scriptures tell us in the Lord's Prayer, in earth as in heaven. So we are supposed to be bringing heaven onto earth, you know. And how do you do that is, like the brother was saying, you constantly being involved in wisdom. You indulge yourself in wisdom, which is right here, Joshua 1:8. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Right. And so all this is just accumulation of what your one was reading, as far as, you know, knowing the will of the Lord. Number one, the will of the Lord is, like you said, understanding that this is the end of this wicked kingdom. But then you got to understand why. Why do we say that? Why do we say that Babylon the Great is going to be destroyed? Why do we say the other nations are going into slavery? Why do we say 2/3 of the nation of Israel are going to be destroyed? All these things, you know, just giving a few examples, wisdom gives us the answer to. And because we know this, this is why we have to walk different from what the world, you know, has shown us to be. Because we're like I said, we're fashioned unto the heavens, you know. So you have to make heavenly decisions, man. You got it.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, I got one more, Salakia.
Okay.
Cause this is just go all into, you know, the how our minds are supposed to be, right? So this is James chapter 1 and verse 17. No, that's not the right one, Salakia. It's verse chapter 3. James chapter 3 and starting at verse 15, it says, start at 14 for context. But if 13, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness and wisdom. All right. And so this is an individual that's supposed to have wisdom. And so how you see how they carry themselves will let you know, are they truly in line with the vision that Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua has for this world? And what we have, you know, come to see is that the majority of our people, 2/3 to be exact, they don't have the vision of the Lord. Because I believe I read that earlier, where it said the what the vision faileth, the people that how to word it, where there is no vision, the people perish, or something like that, roughly paraphrasing. You know, so because they don't see what the Lord is doing, their decision is predicated upon trying to forward themselves in this life. And that's why you see a lot of people all right, pretty much, leading themselves onto the path of destruction because they're not making the proper preparations to, move on to the world that the Lord has beyond this one. So it says, but if you have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. For where envy and the strife is, there is confusion in every work. And that's why at the end of the day, it's all about being humble in this truth. We look at Yahweh Shai. All right, Yahweh Shai had the power to pretty much end the Roman Empire and bring the kingdom of heaven, if he really chose to. But he was humble into knowing that, look, it's not about what I want. All right, Israel wanted to crown him king. It wasn't about what Israel wanted. It's about what the Most High and what His will is. And His will was for the prophecy of His sacrifice to take place. That we still had another captivity that we had to go into, and ultimately we're at a point in time now to where we're about to see our captivity accomplished, to where we're about to be taken up out of here. So you can't allow the wisdom, all right, or your experience in this truth, or however long you've known this truth or whatever, to make you proud. And that's what a lot of Jake have done, is use their pride for having this knowledge to either pervert the gospel, to lord over people, to pretty much, corrupt the sincerity of what this truth is about. So it says, verse 17, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. All right, and that's why you see it's a unity amongst the true body of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, because we have the vision, the true vision of prophecy. All right, we know the will of the Lord, and therefore we're operating in true wisdom so that we can, aid in the bringing of the kingdom of heaven onto the earth. Y'all brothers got it. Slack it for me along with it.
Nah, you did that. Good. Where were you at, your mom?
You want Ephesians again?
You can just read verse 17.
God. Ephesians 5:17. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is.
Right. So like the priest just went into, man, right? Be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. Understanding the will of the Lord, is to have that vision, man. Is to be able to see all these things, on the horizon, right? As when you read into Habakkuk, right? Right, you see prophecy coming, right? You read into the prophecies of, the kingdom coming, right? You read into the prophecies on men receiving spiritual power in these days, man. Right? All these things coming to pass require you to understand what the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai is, right? Which is true wisdom,
Okay. If I can add one more point to it, you also see, this truth is not about us. That's another thing. A lot of guys, have used this knowledge to forward themselves, and they took the whole mission of what this truth was about, which is to do the Father's will, and to progress prophecy and preach the Father's words as a warning to the rest of our people, as well as the heathen nations of the coming takeover that Yahweh Shai and the elect are about to do. So this is why, like I said, you got to take yourself out the equation and be humble, because a lot of Jake will come into this truth and allow the wisdom. Well, I'm gonna say they'll allow knowledge to puff them up, and now the pride, it skews your decision making to where now you have completely went off course. now you're doing some carnal shit, trying to forward yourself and leading people that's following you to your destruction, instead of continuing to do the work in sincerity and truth and pushing forward for the edification of the elect.
Exactly. Could you get 1 Thessalonians 4:1?
Okay. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 1, and it says, furthermore, then we beseech you, brethren, and exhort you by the Lord Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, that as ye have received of us how ye ought to walk and to please the Most High, so ye would abound more and more.
Right. So, like the priest was saying, man, The path has already been laid, man. Right? All we have to do is continue on the walk that the Lord set forth for us, man. Right? When
Mm-hmm.
you start deviating from the path, that's when things start getting hard, man. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go like you walk through nature, right? There's a path that's already been laid, right, by nature. But when you start trying to go break off and do your own thing, now you walking through trees, climbing over logs, and all type of stuff, man. Right? You falling in like this. It's a way that hasn't been established, man. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's pitfalls and dangers that come with that. When the Lord already set forth a path of safety, man. Right? You have your own things to overcome during that time, but it's already there to get you to the end goal, man. Right? You can already see what the reward is going to be. Right? You don't know what's at the end. Well, we know what's at the end, but Jake doesn't realize what's at the end of taking your own routes, right? On this path, man.
Quick precept for you. This is Sirach 18 and 24. It says, think upon the wrath that shall be at the end, and the time of vengeance when he shall turn away his face.
Man. So we that one thing we know for sure, actually two things, man, is that we know what needs to be done in order to receive salvation, and we know what can be done to receive destruction, man. Right? So you think upon what you could be doing that will put you in a position to receive of that damnation, man. You stray far away from it, man. You know, you can see
Mm-hmm.
that comes with that sight, that eyesight, that vision, man. Because that you see the will of the Lord in regards to 2/3 in these heathen, man. Right, but you see the will of the Lord in regards to the elect, right? As it says,
Mm-hmm.
I have given you an expected end, right? Not one of destruction, right? The chosen have an expected end of salvation, man. Right? But
That's
you
right.
see what steps could be taken to put you in a position of receiving of that damnation, man. And that's why we have these examples being set forth in these last times, man, of how not to move according to Yahweh Shemel Rashai.
I got a scripture.
Okay, you got that.
It's Deuteronomy 30 and verse 15. The subtitle in the blue letter, it says, choose life. It says, Deuteronomy 30 and 15, it says, see, I have set before thee this day life and death. Excuse me. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. And that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy power, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. And the Lord thy power shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other powers and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong your days upon the land whither thou passes over Jordan to possess it. Finishing out verse 19, it says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. So just like you said, it's two things that are certain, the path, for good, and then the path for destruction. All right, and the Lord already gave us, the answer. The Lord made it very simple. That's why the scriptures go into, a simplicity in the Lord Yahweh Shai. He said to choose life.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You have
Mm-hmm.
some priest.
Yeah. Because as part of you choosing life is you understanding that we made a vow to the Lord when we came back into the understanding of us being Israelites, which pretty much reintroduced us to the covenant that Yawam just read. So this is Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and verse 4. When thou vowest a vow unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, defer not to pay it, for he have no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. So we like I said, we made a vow to the Lord, going back, because when we got reintroduced to the covenant, we remember the promise that we made to the Most High when Moses, brought the tablets down. All right, and that blood was sprinkled upon Israel as a sign, as and a token that we was gonna follow Yahweh by Shem Yahushua and His commandments. And so, knowing that now, when you come into this truth, everything that we're doing is to ultimately finish, for us to complete that vow. Like when Yahushua, after He gave His life, on the cross, well, right before He gave the Spirit up, He said it is done. And so He was able to complete His mission. And so our point now is to make sure that we can complete our mission, which is to endure to the end, and then we'll be saved, Lord willing, we're of the elect. So if you forget, your vow to the Lord, the promise that you made that you was going to endure to the end, Satan will begin to plague your mind with these different, cares of the world, and that will lead to your destruction. That's why you got to keep your eyes single. I think y'all mentioned that earlier before I got on. Keeping your eyes single so that no matter what happens to you, whether whatever adversity comes upon you or whatever, the goal remains the same, to finish the course, man. Don't make your house shot sacrifice in vain, man, because otherwise that's going to lead to your destruction. You fall out this truth, your destruction is sealed, man.
Exactly. Hey, we've been given the the roadmap, right? We got the compass pointing the east. We got the all the things we need for this journey, man.
Bro, it's cheat codes. We got the cheat codes, bro. Like, I know brothers, I think it was the Gideon Bible. They used to give out the little small compact Bibles you could put like in your car and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they'll have it like in the table of contents, like whatever emotion or problem you're feeling, and they'll give you the precept to help you meditate on that. So we got the cheat codes to deal with literally every situation that we deal with. So like you said, that roadmap, it comes with all the solutions to whatever roadblock or scenario can come. Like you got your GPS in your car when you're driving, and it's a wreck or it's traffic coming up, and they'll give you alternatives, routes that you can take to avoid that. Well, instead of the avoidance, the Lord gives us the roadmap on how to get through those different things, so it doesn't slow up or stop our mission.
Exactly.
I want to line back on that point, because in what they call land nav or land navigation, they say, you don't want to, get too tunnel vision, pretty much into your path, and pretty much relying on, what you feel like you're doing, so because what can happen during land navigation, pretty much you might feel as if you're going in a straight line, but whole time, you drifting away from the, intended path, and I got some information right here. It says drifting. It says veer off caused by one dominant leg or terrain features threatens land navigation, and also going into leaning on your own understanding and focusing on what's happening versus focusing on the Lord. But it says threatens land navigation by masking your position and exhausting your pace count. This can lead into rugged hazards, like you mentioned, Quantum Waff. It says cliffs, deep water cause you to trespass on dangerous terrain, or result in you becoming hopelessly lost. And that's the that can be the ramifications of one, leaning upon their own understanding. So I want to get that precept again. This is Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding." So we gotta, we got earlier in Matthew 6. We have to keep our eyes single and focus on the Lord Yahweh Shai.
I want to go even further on that point of what you said, because looking at it through a spiritual lens is really the opposite of what you said, because looking at it spiritually, you do want to have tunnel vision as far as keeping your eye on the path, because like the scriptures say, the Lord made if somebody get that in Isaiah, where the path for the wayfaring man, because what you mentioned drifting. So on a spiritual level, if you're not laser focused on your goal, they have a term called drifting for that too. So I got this from this book from Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. Now in this book, it's pretty much like a conversation that he's having with the devil, and the devil is explaining all the ways that he has pretty much, gained control of the minds of the people, or the masses or whatnot. Now, dealing with this word drifting, right? So it says, my greatest weapon over human beings consists of two secret principles by which I gain control of their minds. I will speak first of the principle of habit, through which I silently enter the minds of people. By operating through this principle, I wish I could avoid using this word, the habit of drifting. When a person begins to drift on any subject, he is headed straight toward the gates of what you earthbound call hell. And so, like, the whole premise of this book is like a question answer. So a question will be said, and then the devil was like, it's like an interview. And so he's giving an answer to all the questions that's being said. So just reading it how it's worded. So Napoleon Hill asks, it says, describe all the ways in which you induce people to drift. Define the word and tell us exactly what you mean by it. He said, I can best define the word drift by saying that people who think for themselves never drift, while those who do little or no thinking for themselves are drifters. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. He would rather let me occupy his mind and do his thinking than go to the trouble of thinking for himself. A drifter is one who accepts life, it's like he accepts whatever life throws his way without making a protest or putting up a fight. He doesn't know what he wants from life and spends all his time getting just that. A drifter has a lot of options, but they are not his own. Most of them are supplied by me. A drifter is one who is too lazy mentally to use his own brain. That is the reason I can take control of people's thinking and plant my own ideas in their minds. And so, pretty much what I was saying, this is why, like the scriptures say, keep thy eyes single. All right, meditate upon the heavenly things. Staying in the spirit, walk in the spirit, walk with wisdom, because that's you guarding your mind against the opportunity of allowing your mind to drift, which then will give Satan an avenue to come in and pretty much control your decision making. Because if your mind's not being occupied by the spirit, then ultimately the flesh is going to override, which is going to continue cause you to make carnal decisions. And that's what happens with a lot of guys in this truth. All right, you may get comfortable and you start moving off of the flesh, and now your decision making is skewed because you're not thinking spiritually. Corner, remember that lesson we did about a month ago was going into how pretty much the majority of the people on the earth don't have any inner monologue. I forgot the word.
Yeah.
But that's going into that because they don't have the ability to think for themselves. Because ultimately, you're being programmed. If you're not being programmed by the Spirit of the Heavenly Father and His Son, you're being programmed by the Prince of the Power of the Air. So this is why, like you said, letting your vision power your decision. All right. So now you have to stay focused on your path so that you don't allow Satan to take you off the path. Ultimately, man. Because like you said, the Lord paved the way for us, and that's the thing. That's the whole point of what this fight is in this walk. Is Satan is trying to distract you off your path so that you end up on the broad way with the rest of the world to be destroyed, man.
Mm-hmm. God. Hey, Yoam, could you get Proverbs 4, just adding to the point, 4:14, and read down to 15?
Priest, you still wanted the Wayfarer scripture?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Bob Kushar.
Yeah, get that.
This is Isaiah 35 and verse 8, and it says, and an highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness.
Mm-hmm. That highway is going into the straight gate. All right, the path to salvation. So it's here. All right, it's here to where everybody can see it to a degree, but the majority of people don't want to do it because that's too much work. All right, they rather it be given to them. That's why I said Satan in that book says that, look, man, people don't want to have to think for themselves. They don't want to have to critically problem solve. They don't want to have to pretty much, do the dirty work, man. All right, get your hands dirty, man. Get put in the game and actually put in work. No, you want to just be led to the kingdom. No, bro. You gotta actually do the internal work as well as the outer work, because just doing the bare minimum, which is these lessons, go down the highways, that's the bare minimum. That's our reasonable service. The true work is what's being done off camera. That's the true, inner man building, all right, inner healing, because we all as a people have trauma that Satan uses to pretty much, cause us to pretty much battle these demonic thoughts and whatever else. So the path is here, but you have to be able to see it spiritually. And the main way that path becomes clear is when you focus in on the spirit of the Lord, man, and walk in wisdom. Because then now it's made simple. Go ahead.
It says, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those the wayfaring men, though fools shall not err therein.
Yeah, the wayfaring man. The man. I was going to that word, that wayfarer. Grab it real quick. Wayfarer. That's not the right one. Hold on.
I'm gonna get in the blue letter.
Yeah, so that I don't know why. What's the name? The Edamon's tripping on that. That's weird.
It says the Hebrew word halak. It says to walk, to come, to go, to depart, manner of life, to traverse, to walk about. It says to lead, be conversant, to run. It says bearer, and then it says a faring man.
Yeah, that wasn't what I was looking for, but I got it in the free dictionary. It says a person who goes on a journey, a traveler, because pretty much we're like a pilgrim. So you can interchange the word wayfaring man ultimately for pilgrim, which we know pilgrim is a man, traveling in a place of penance. Where we have a goal in mind of where we're trying to go to, which is the kingdom. So, like I said, man, read that verse again, Michael Shaw.
Isaiah 35 and verse 8. And an highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those the wayfaring men, though fools shall not err therein.
Yeah, it says the fools can't enter in, because the ways of righteousness, like I said, is plain to us. So what makes this path easier is when you put off the ways of the wicked, the bullshit of this world, man. The Lord is not asking for much. You said earlier, it's simplicity in the Lord. Well, what is the Lord asking us? Stop being niggas. All right, to clean ourselves up, to mend our ways and change our ways to ways that's productive to life. A fool can't understand that. A fool still is confounded on the fact of how he can't just eat whatever he wants. The Lord really gonna kill me for eating pork? Yes, nigga. The Lord, the Lord doesn't want you to commit adultery. So it's all these women out here, but Jake want to pop another man's woman that he's putting his rod already in, bro. That's weird shit. Yeah, see, Jake look at it to where his simplicity, all right, is really just stupidity. Because if you really understood the simpleness of why the Lord says what he says, then it will make your life easier. All right. They don't pop another man's woman, because that's what causes diseases, that breaks up homes. That's defiling that man's property. You don't eat the defiled food that's mentioned in the dietary law because of the health concerns and what the impact of taking those animals out the environment. Just using those examples as a pretty much reason to show you on why 2/3 can't see it. As much as you think of it's insignificant, you can just call the Lord whatever you want. That's a heavy thing, because look, Jesus ain't gonna say nobody Allah, Buddha, Yahweh, Yeshua, none of these other false names is not gonna save you. So what Jake looks at is simple, to where, man, I don't see why that really matters. The simplicity in the Lord is just, he said what he said. So just listen. The elect get that. That's why the path to them is clear, because we understand what the Lord is trying to tell us, man, and what he's showing us. If we follow this path, we're going to lead to everlasting life. That's why, when the disciples, had that the one incident to where, Yahushua fed the masses with the bread and the fish, and pretty much the majority of them left. He asked them, "Y'all gonna leave me too?" And it was like, "No. Where else we gonna get eternal life from? That's simple,
Yep.
you know." And that's the same thing that we're experiencing today in this walk, man. Y'all got it.
God. Could you grab that Proverbs 4 and 14, Bubble Shot? You want?
I got you. This is Proverbs. You said 4 and 14.
God.
Proverbs 4 and 14. It says, "Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men."
Mm-hmm.
It says, "Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away."
Right. So just building off that point, right? Us walking this path. There's areas where there's signage up. Don't go this way, right? Danger, right? This is uncharted, right? This, like you said, the cliffs, the rocks, right? As the scriptures talk about the fire on one side and the water on the other, right? If you go that way, it's to your own peril, man. So we're being specifically instructed, right, by the man who pretty much laid the foundation for us, man, laid the way to not go in these ways, man. Right? It said avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. I mean, just keep it moving, man. Brothers, love to use the book of Eli, for an analogy of this manner, because his main focus was getting west, man. Right? Everything else that he was doing, he was always thinking about, I need to keep going west. Right? No matter what was in his way, no matter who was trying to stop him, his eye was single, his vision was pointed to get to that direction, man. And that's the same way, we have to carry ourselves.
All right, I got a precept to add to you. This is Isaiah 52 and 11. It says, depart ye, go ye out from thence, touch no unclean thing, go ye out of the midst of her, be ye clean that bear, and sorry, it says, be ye clean that bear the vessels of the Lord. And that's what, essentially what you said. All right, as we are, distancing ourselves from the ways of the wicked, all right, it's things that that's out here that can pollute you if you allow your spirit to pretty much touch those things. Now, touching doesn't actually have to be physical. All right, touching is pretty much you partaking.
Yeah.
All right, so right here when you look up that word touch, it's H5060 is the word naga, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want?
You got Isaiah 52 and 11.
Yeah, for that word touch.
That should be Nagai.
Nagai. Okay, kind.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when you look up that definition of that word, it says to apply, to befall, to reach. So pretty much, like I said, you putting these things to yourself. So as it said, touch no unclean thing. All right. Now, another thing that you could apply to, I think, is another thing that said to abate. And when you look up the word abate, we'll go to Edamon real quick. The word abate means to put it into. So the ways of wickedness, we're supposed to pretty much, cease from having that to be a part of our spirit, because what it says to grow less, to diminish in power and influence. And the more we put off the ways of the flesh and the world, all right, it has less of an influence on us, which, weakens the pull that it has on our spirit. That way, we're able to operate in the Holy Spirit, on a stronger level, man. So like I said, touch no unclean thing, man. So all the ways of wickedness you're supposed to avoid and ultimately look at and discuss, man. Y'all got it.
Okay. Let's get Acts. So Acts 28 and 27.
Okay. It's Acts 28 and verse 27. And it says, for the heart of this people is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes have they closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them.
Right. So as the priest was bringing out, right, touch no unclean thing, right? You know, these people, like the scriptures tell you to, what's the word? When you be amongst the indiscreet, to observe the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in this world, but we're not of this world, right?
Yep.
So, you know, you have to be able to discern. That goes back into the vision, man, right? You have to be able to discern when you have to dip in and out of this matrix here, man. You
Yep.
know? But like I said, because these people, their heart is wax gross, their ears are full or dull of hearing. So it's like that this message is going over their heads, man. Right? They
Mm-hmm.
can't see this light. They got the spiritual cataracts, man. Right? They it says their eyes have closed. At least they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and should be converted, and I should heal them. Right? So we're being healed, man. This is healing that you're receiving, man. Right? From wandering in this darkness, man. Right? From stammering about not knowing which way to go, which way to turn. You know, we've received that ability to see these things, to see the will of the Lord, right, and understand it, man. Right? So it's a blessing to receive this, but like it read, you know, these people aren't gonna understand what we're doing, man. Right? So you have to, you know, slowly separate yourself, right? Or sometimes it's a more abrupt, but your mindset is to be holy, to be separate, right, from the ways of this world, man. Right?
Yeah.
You know, to make your decisions contrary to what the modern consensus would be. You know that's why people will look at us, right? Look at the decisions that we make and the decision that they make, and they might look at us a certain way. They look sideways at you because you're not doing what they're doing, man. Right?
Con, I got something for you. This is 1 Corinthians 12:1. It says, "Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away even unto these dumb idols, even as you were led." It says, "Wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaking in the spirit of Yahweh calleth Yahushua accursed, and that no man can say that Yahushua is the Lord, but by the Holy Spirit." Now, the point I want to get is verse 2. It says that we were Gentiles led away by these dumb idols. So the things that we were, once in the world partaking in, worshiping or whatnot, we had broken away from that because the Lord ultimately he woke us up out of that trance because you mentioned about the spiritual cataracts or whatnot, but ultimately what that is they're under a spell being cast by the wicked. The lies and the idolatry that Jake is being tricked into worshiping is being done strategically by the devil. And so it's another term from this book of Outwitting the Devil I want to go into real quick called hypnotic rhythm. So when you go into this, it says, what is hypnotic rhythm? How do you use it to gain permanent mastery over human beings? It says, I will have to go back into time and space and give you a brief elementary description of how nature uses hypnotic rhythm. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand my description of how I use this universal law to control human beings. It says, go ahead, but keep your story confined to simple illustrations which come within the range of my own experience and knowledge of natural laws. Very well, I shall do my best. You, of course, know that nature maintains a perfect balance between all the elements and all the energy in the universe. You can see the stars and the planets move with perfect precision, each one keeping its own place in time and space. You can see that the seasons of the year come and go with perfect regularity. You can see that an oak tree grows from an acorn and pine grows from the seed of his ancestor. An acorn never produces a pine, and a pine seed never produces an oak. These are simple things that which anyone can understand. What one cannot see is the universal law through which nature maintains perfect balance through the myriad of universes. You earthbound caught a fragmentary glimpse of this great universal law when Newton discovered that it holds your earth in its position and causes all material objects to be attracted toward the center of the earth. He called the law of gravitation. All right, so I'm gonna skip down. Um, as I have already stated, there's a universal form of energy with which nature keeps a perfect balance between all matter and energy. She makes specialized use of this universal building material by breaking it into different wavelengths. The breaking up process is carried on through habit. You will better understand what I'm trying to convey if I compare it with the method of which when one learns to play music. At first, the notes are memorized in the mind, then they are related to one another through melody and rhythm. By repetition, the melody and rhythm become fixed in the mind. Observe how relentlessly the musician must repeat a tune before he masters it. Through repetition, the musical notes blend, and then you have music. Any impulse of thought that the mind repeats over and over through habit forms an organized rhythm. Undesirable habits can be broken. They must be broken before they assume the proportions of rhythm. Are you following me? So as he's explaining, pretty much, the ways of wickedness had to be pretty much, trained in us, which through continued repetition, through different ways that was passed down from generation to generation. That's why, compared to when we first came into captivity here in Babylon the Great versus how we are today, the things that have been ingrained in us to this day had to be, put in us through Esau continually bombarding us with the ways of wickedness while not allowing us to participate in our own law, statute, commandment. That's why, real quick, just to, bring some scriptures in real quick. Get in First Maccabees dealing with Antiochus Epiphanes when we couldn't practice our laws, real quick, Baba Kashan. Because like as we're going into, this is a milk topic, but when you, like I said, the more you grow in understanding, you get a deeper insight to what Yahweh Shem Yahushua is telling us and why we need to be focused on the vision so that you understand your decision making more clearly instead of you just following blindly. Because hey, in this truth, in the beginning stages, this is why you have the Apostle Bar. He uses the animal levels of understanding, which you have, the parrot, monkey, frog, and I believe the dragon is the last one. And majority of Jake, Slaki is parrot, monkey, frog, the owl, and then the dragon. So most Jake, they never pass the first three levels of understanding because we know the parrot is you pretty much just mocking everything. The monkey, like say that's saying monkey see, monkey do, and then the frog is the stubbornness. So Jake never elevates past those three levels of understanding. So that's why you have a lot of Jake that'll come into this truth and they'll see the groundwork that has been laid. All right, do the videos, go out on the highways and byways, wear your fringes, and that's it. They never really got further insight on why we do these things, or why we're prophesying out on the videos and on the highways, while we're saying what we're saying. It's a deeper level of understanding that Jake never really gets to because they're stuck on those entry levels of understanding. So this is why Esau Edom pretty much programs you to go off and accept the ways of idolatry and pretty much forsake the ways of the Lord because he knew later on down the line that it was going to be second nature to you. And that's why the Lord is reprogramming us through the wisdom. Y'all got it.
You said First Maccabees, what chapter?
1 and like 41.
Oh, yeah. First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
Mm-hmm.
Yet many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judea that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances.
And that's what he did. And like I said, this is a systematic, generational, system that they created to make the ways of the Lord seem evil to our people while accepting the ways of wickedness as normal.
Yep.
And this is why that reprogramming that we're going into now is what will empower you to be able to make better decisions in this walk. This is why we were saying, man, walking with that wisdom so that you can see when the ways of the world are pulling you, out of the ways of understanding, to where now your decision making is being skewed because you're not operating in the spirit, man. All right. So, finishing this up in this book, it says, go right to the point, man. So it says, I can see that you do think very deeply. My opposition to power you earthbound call God has everything to do with the salvation of people from eternal annihilation. For what that reason is my opposition, who provides every human being with the privilege of using his own mind. If you use that power by maintaining control over your own mind, you become part of it when you give up your physical body. If you neglect to use it, then I have the privilege of taking advantage of the neglect through the law of hypnotic rhythm. It says, how much of a person do you take over when you gain control of him? Everything that is left after he ceases to control and use his own mind. In other words, when you gain control of a person, you take overall. It's like you take over their. It's like, in other words, when you take control of a person, you take over all there is of his individuality up to the time when he quits using his own mind. Is that correct? That is how I operate. So in this book, he's literally telling you that when you're not operating with intention and staying in your purpose, Satan pretty much comes in, and he's pretty much controlling you unto your destruction. That's why it's that saying that the majority of the people are NPCs, because the prince of the power of the air is controlling these people like robots and pretty much going to lead them to their destruction. That's why the elect has been risen up to a point to where we're not pretty much under his control anymore. So jumping down, it says, what human fear best serves your purpose? The fear of death. Why is the fear of death your favorite weapon? Because no one knows because no one knows, and by the very nature of the laws of the universe, no one can prove definitely what happens after death. But see, that's to the people out of the understanding. So one of the ways that we have broken free of that, because now the Lord has given us the understanding of what happens after death. It's just a transition to where our spirits leave these bodies and return back to the Heavenly Father in the spiritual realm until it's time for us to come back down onto earth in a new vessel, a new body. So it says, this uncertainty frightens people out of their wits. People who give over their minds to fear, any sort of fear, neglect to use their minds and begin to drift. Eventually, they drift into the whirlpool of hypnotic rhythm from which they may never escape. And what's the perfect example of that? What we saw in 2020. All right, through the fear of that jab, not jab, of the C-19, pretty much killing people. Hey, these people, they wrote whatever decision making these devils were saying, man. These devils told you to put a mask on, which the mask was killing you. Then they told you to take all these boosters and shots and shit, which is killing you. They told you to stay 6 feet away from people, be in the house, which ultimately was, killing us because we weren't able to get the vitamin D from the sun and communicate with people, which is why people are bugged out. So just seeing the current example of how this has affected people, and then look at that on a broader scale, and look at Jake as a whole, who pretty much allow this devil to control them because they don't have the ability to see the vision the Lord has for them. So if you're not following the Lord's vision, what vision you following? You're following the devil's vision, man, to your destruction.
Exactly. If you following somebody.
Scripture say you don't you can't serve two masters. Hey,
Yep.
you serve. If you're not serving the Most High, you're serving Satan, man. It's as simple as that.
That's it. That's it. But that was all I had, man. You know, bros didn't have anything else.
Nah, that was it.
God. Hey, so Lord willing, that was edified through the Spirit and probably how about you, man? I was shy again, man. Let the vision of the Lord, right, power your decision making, man. You know. So
That's right.
Lord, once again, that was edifying through the Spirit, probably how about you, man? I was shy. We want to close by giving our praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'ashem,
Ba'Shem, Ba'Shem, Ba'Dash.
Give honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who will well and teach well, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.